we had great feedback on our conversation last week on the top 5 prospects of the Winnipeg Jets, and it's pretty clear that there's that top 4 of Lucius, Recker, McGroarty, Barlow, and Brad Lambert, and depending on who you talk to, I think those 4 can almost be in any order. But now, and we had the conversation with Billy Hanel and, of course, Elias Salomonsson, who I know the team is very, very high on, and we got a chance to see at development camp. Part 2 of this is out, and let's talk a little bit about the Jets prospects that weren't that group of first-rounders that we've talked about, led by Elias Salomonsson, who, I mean, from my opinion, I think is maybe knocking on that door to be the Winnipeg Jets' top defense prospect, and certainly may very well be that at the end of next year.
Yeah, Salomonsson, I mean, just think of a professional team, an SHL team, top tier in Sweden, trusting him to play consistent minutes, albeit in a third pairing role, weeks after his 18th birthday. Like, he's a young prospect. August 31st is his birthday. He's just going to turn 19 before this season begins. And now they've got a little bit of movement there. There's opportunity for him to step into the top 4 if he comes in and has a good camp. He had a tremendous playoff run for his SHL team as well. Made it, I believe, to the finals of his league. And he played a substantial role. His metrics looked good. Yes, again, mostly third pairing minutes. But it's hard for players in those situations to get that kind of consistency in terms of playing against men at that age. And I think that it's to his credit that he was able to become somebody that they believed in for that. And I think that you can just look at this next season as an opportunity for continued growth for Elias Salomonsson on that front. I really think that, when I attempt to, and I'm certainly not an expert at this, but I'm doing my best, when I attempt to project these guys, accomplishments versus their age level is a big deal to me. And, we can get into that a bit with the goalies in that. For me, Salomonsson doing what he's done so far at this age is a tremendous sign. And I kind of like that he sneaks up on people prospect review-wise, and that he's a plus skater to be sure, but nobody's saying that skill is elite or his shot is elite or this, that, or the other thing is just an absolute standout thing about him. But everything that he does at least above average. And I think that that's an intriguing player when you look at Ville Heinola or Declan Chisholm to a degree, Leon Gavanka, who just departed. Like, there's a clear trend with Winnipeg's prospect D to have at least one obvious hole in their game. Salomonsson doesn't have that, and that's kind of exciting for me.
Murat of The Athletic with us discussing the prospects in the Winnipeg Jets. You mentioned goalies, and we'll get to that in a second. But the other skaters in your top 10 are 2 Russians. And one is Dmitry Rashevsky, who's 22 and still playing in Russia. The other is a younger player, a bit smaller, in Nikita Chibrikov, who, of course, signed with the Moose at the end of last season and will begin playing in earnest here in North America this year. Murat, what do we know about these young Russians? Obviously, we've heard a little bit more from Chibrikov because he's been there. But I know you've kind of been digging around. Give us thoughts on Chibrikov as well as Rashevsky and whether, if and when, they might fit into Winnipeg Jet plans.
Yeah, I'll start with Chibrikov because I was quite taken by his release and his willingness to play into traffic at Jets development camp. For me, I've heard some reports that he doesn't play into the middle of the ice. Then I talked to, Scott Wheeler or Corey Pronman, or I watch the video that I can find, and, there's resources for that. And I see him play into the middle of the ice. And I like the way that he plays in traffic. I also like the way that he gets his shot off in very quickly from dangerous positions. Like I really like his offensive skills. And we get asked a lot about, will Chaz Lucius star for the Moose, maybe play for the Jets? I'm not sure. Will Brad Lambert do the same? I think Chibrikov has a chance to be a really impactful offensive Moose player as well this year. And at his age, that's an impressive thing. And if he is able to do that, and we'll see what his adaptation is like, if he is, then you could look at top 6 NHL future with a little more optimism. And I think that would be nice. With Rashevsky, also, I love his play in small ice scenarios. There are a lot of give and goes through traffic. There's a player like Brad Lambert, who I would say has a much higher ceiling, who is so fast. He doesn't always play through the seams in the middle of the ice. With Rashevsky, he can make passes between skates, under sticks, all those sorts of things that are they're professional level skills. And at 22 years old, I guess you would understand why he has a little bit more development there. The thing that I'm concerned about with Rashevsky is whether he does, in fact, end up coming over to North America. And he's got 2 years left on his contract. I think he'll be 24 still when that ends. Plenty of time, plenty of runway on the player, but he's got a good thing going on in Russia. He's one of his team's top scorers. He could be the top scorer this year. He'll get paid more there than on an ELC over here. And I would say I have a little bit of hesitance there, and then we'll see. We'll see what happens in terms of his long-term coming over to North America.
And then we've got the goalies. DiVincentiis, and listen, we go back to Connor Hellebuyck being selected. No one knew who he was. No one had even freaking heard of the Odessa Jackalopes. And he's turned into be arguably one of, if not the best draft pick the Jets have made based on, where a player was taken and what they've done for the big club. Might we have a similar success story? Maybe not to the extent of Hellebuyck winning a Vezina, but Dom DiVincentiis is a 7th rounder last year. And what's interesting in comparing him with the other goaltender that's on this list, and Thomas Milic, we're all very familiar with Milic from his work in with Team Canada, the Seattle Thunderbirds. He's in fact older than DiVincentiis because somehow he was passed over. I mean, what have you learned about goaltending? And I know we often say that it's voodoo, but it seems like the Jets have a couple really, really intriguing prospects. One that started in the OHL last year, one that started in the WHL last year. Certainly the results on the ice last season couldn't be much better for either of these two young men.
Yeah, absolutely. I projecting goalies is so difficult to do. I think even the folks that would consider themselves experts, they allow a lot of variance in that. And for me, I look at what we can know. And for me, Dom DiVincentiis had just excellent numbers in the OHL, even as a backup when his starter was older than him last season when Winnipeg drafted him. For me to step in and have a better save percentage than your starting goaltender, that's not something you can hang your hat on forever in terms of a projection, but that's an impressive feat for him at that age already. Then to seize the starter's reins and become the OHL goaltender of the year with the performances that he put together. I mean, you go through the list of OHL goalies, and I included that at the bottom of my most recent, my part 2 prospects piece. There's a lot of good goalies in there. Same with the WHL with Thomas Milic. And not everybody on the list is a hit. Not everybody goes on to superstardom, but there's a few great ones on those lists. And I encourage you to dig into the comments of part 2 of my prospects piece to have a look. There's quality there. The thing I like about DiVincentiis, to talk to him as well, is he almost has that Hellebuckian, like, obscene focus on the work. Like, the guy is obsessed with process, it seems like. The 7th round is a starting point, he told us last year. His conversations with Drew McIntyre, Winnipeg's goaltending development coach and scout, I think that there's a real commitment not to the outcome so much as the process, which I think I really admire in a person that young. At his size as well, you like that projection. Size is obviously why Milic was let go through a couple of drafts despite incredible numbers and incredible runs through the WHL. Both of those guys are players that you'd be thrilled to have in a prospect pool in terms of projecting what happens next as they enter their pro careers, or if they enter their pro careers right away, what level. That, we'll wait and see a little bit.
The topics of the size on Milic cracks me up. I mean, it's not like we're talking about Darren Pang here or anything like that. I mean, he was good enough to make it happen through all those other spots. And, now presumably he'll be, and I would think that assuming everything happens contract-wise with him, he'll get an opportunity to play with the Manitoba Moose this year and try and just continue what he's done at such a high level at the next step. And that step would be one step away from the NHL.
Honestly, yeah. And somebody's got to end up, I mean, you have Hellebuyck still, you have Laurent Brossoit, who once laughed quite a bit when I mentioned goaltending as voodoo, and then Delia. So Delia who can play pro. You have Oskari Salminen still. Somebody's got to go down to ECHL or find an alternate assignment. But it doesn't have to be Milic. If he can come in and demonstrate that, that he can play at that level,